In today's video, we have some trade talk around the New York Islanders and the Boston Bruins. Plus, we have an update on the Calgary Flames and Jonathan Huberdeau. Is GM Brad Treliving going the extra mile to try to convince the superstar to remain with the Flames long term? We have several updates on some RFAs. Some RFA ARB cases are already underway. We also have some more signings as well, players avoiding arbitration, and we have some other updates as well, including the captain's name for Team Canada's World Junior Team. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news or rumors to take a look at here today. As you can see, I'm still on the road from Halifax, Nova Scotia right now. We will be here for a few more days. You will see some pre-recorded videos popping up on the channel periodically over the next week as well that I get done before we took off on vacation. So certainly stay tuned for those. So if you see me going back and forth at it, it kind of explains why here depending on the setting you get for the video. But for right now, what you see behind me is Halifax. So I certainly hope you enjoy the scenery behind me while we have a little chat around today's news and rumors. So first up, let's take a look at some restricted free agents. We have some ARB cases, players avoiding arbitration, etc. First up, Yakov Trenin and the Nashville Predators. They had their hearing today, so the first arbitration case is officially underway. No more negotiating can take place there. They were just a little bit over $1 million apart. It's believed the player was looking for around $2.4 million, where the team was more comfortable at $1.3. At least that's what they was submitted for the arbitration purposes. Both sides argued their cases today, and now we await the decision from the arbitrator themselves to see what the reward is going to be on a new contract. So typically it's only a few days time before you get a decision. Right now we don't have a whole lot of cases going on, so it shouldn't be too long. Now the next case is scheduled to get underway tomorrow, and that's New Jersey and Jesper Bratt. So that one's going to be very interesting. They have a much bigger gap that they need to bridge here. The player was looking for around $6.5 million, whereas the team was, I believe, in around 4.3, 4.4 range. So that's a big difference. Of course, Bratt had a real solid year last year, but 70 plus points, could be a big factor in their team's future. But as I mentioned before, I've done research going back over a decade. When these cases actually hit arbitration, a lot of times the player and the team's relationship can be damaged, and the likelihood of a player staying long term, at least after that, is not good. Most cases, I believe it's like 90 to 95% of arbitration cases over the past 10, 12 years that the player that went through it was gone from the team within 1 to 2 years max. So hopefully that doesn't necessarily mean the case for Brad here. Maybe there'll be some kind of last minute miracle they come to terms before it gets underway. It's scheduled tomorrow, which is Wednesday, I believe at 9 a.m. Eastern time is when it's supposed to start. So just like Trenin here, once it starts, they can't go back. Negotiations stop, and it all takes the process over from there. So we'll see how that goes. A couple of other players, though, did avoid salary arbitration hearings and come to terms here today, including the Devils signing Tyce Thompson. He gets a 2-year deal. The terms they agreed on for him is the first year is a 2-way contract, $750 at the NHL level, $175 at the AHL level. The second year, though, it is a 1-way deal valued at $775,000. The Flyers also avoided arbitration with Zach MacEwan, getting him signed to a 1-year deal, $925,000. So that gets him on board with Philly for at least one more year. And Oliver Kylington had a breakout season with 30-plus points in Calgary. Settles with them avoiding arbitration on a 2-year deal, a $2.5 million. I think that's a pretty good deal for the Calgary Flames. I think arbitration, he might have got a little bit more, but I don't think a whole lot. I kind of had him pegged between like 2.5, 2.75, something to that matter, based on his point projections last year, especially after having a 1-year breakout. Sometimes you don't get players getting too long-term of a deal. I guess the only downfall here is this deal does walk him directly to being a UFA at a very early age. So I guess we'll have to see if he can duplicate last season's performance and have another solid, season to kind of back that up. Then they can begin working on negotiations to extend him and hopefully keep him in Calgary longer term. But certainly, a young player that's, still kind of needs to prove himself a little bit more before he gets that long-term extension. Now, as I mentioned, we also had some updates today from Team Canada announcing their captain and leadership group for the upcoming World Junior Championships. As I mentioned yesterday, talking about their roster selections, as I thought Mason McTavish is indeed going to be the captain, the obvious choice in my opinion. McTavish, the number 3 overall pick from the Anaheim Ducks here in 2021, certainly had a really quite a roller coaster year this past year, appearing in 9 NHL games, got sent down to the AHL and back to the OHL, played in Peterborough, got traded, played in the World Juniors, went to the Olympics. He has had an absolutely crazy season, but he's taken the opportunity here, even though many players have opted to not participate again, to be the captain and leader for Canada in this tournament. And it's certainly an opportunity for him to wear the C for his country and hopefully bring home a gold medal. So it's something he's very much looking forward to. And of course, his alternate captains are going to be Kent Johnson, of course, the first rounder in Columbus Blue Jackets prospect, who had a brief taste of the NHL last year and will likely be a full-timer this year. And Donovan Sabrango, of course, as well, the defenseman, arguably Canada's leader in that regard. Certainly a third-round pick a couple of years back from the Detroit Red Wings. Certainly another player who was projecting to be potential NHL talent. So that's the leadership group announced here for Team Canada for the upcoming tournament. Now, a couple of other players as well. I guess you could say they're former NHLers at this point. There was some rumors that Dominic Cahoon, former NHLer, played with a variety of teams in Chicago, Edmonton, Pittsburgh, might be making an NHL return, but that's been nixed. It's not going to happen. Cahoon has signed a 3-year contract extension to play in the Swiss League, and former NHLer, former Toronto Maple Leaf, Freddie Gauthier, of course, largely nicknamed the GOAT, is heading to the Swiss League as well, unable to get an NHL contract right now. Ever since he's left Toronto, it's not that he had a big role in Toronto, but there was a period of time there where he was a consistent fourth-line player for maybe a year or two, and after that, it's really been inconsistent for him, and now he's heading overseas to try his luck in the Swiss League. Now, as I mentioned as well, there are also reports from Brad Treliving, the Calgary Flames general manager, getting into Montreal to meet with Jonathan Huberdeau over dinner, to kind of what you'd call like a get-to-know-me type of dinner. Of course, we know that Treliving pulled off a blockbuster deal, arguably the biggest blockbuster deal in the cap era, sending pending RFA Matthew Tkachuk, who inked an 8-year contract as part of the trade agreement with the Calgary Flames to be moved to the Florida Panthers in exchange for Jonathan Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar. So, of course, mega pieces moving in that deal. Tkachuk gets his long-term deal in Florida, so they're secure with their acquisition. But now the Flames, after losing Tkachuk due to this basically trade demand, you might as well call it that, and Johnny Gaudreau, who obviously left as a UFA, that's a big blow to the team. They get 2 really good players back in this deal, so you have to admit Treliving did a fantastic job. But at the same time, the other part here is they're both entering the final year of their contract, and they don't want to be in the same boat to kind of do the same thing all over again next year and lose these more players, right? Like, they can only take so much for players leaving town. And of course, at the same time, depending on the Flames season, if they won't sign, they could be dealt, of course, and to get other assets back in return. I would suspect, though, that if Huberdeau and Weegar, if they can't get them under contract and it came down to it, that they had to move them too, that they might take the team in a new direction and maybe go more of a rebuild after having that many players basically refusing to commit to the Flames on a long-term basis. I know Brad Treliving had commented to some of his staff and people that work with him when getting ready to trade Matthew Tkachuk, or even the media locally, what kind of direction are you taking this team? What kind of return are we looking at? And he said, honestly, he didn't know. Preferably, they could get a return that would help keep them competitive and not really change a whole lot for this team, which he was able to do. But now, like I said, the tricky part is convincing these soon-to-be unrestricted free agents that signing a long-term deal and not exploring that further is the best way to go. And that's tough to do when they haven't even played a game in the city yet and really haven't experienced everything there is to know about being a Calgary Flame. So Brad Treliving's kind of getting the ball rolling here, taking his time to go see Jonathan Huberdeau. Like I said, have a meeting over dinner, get to know each other, and kind of probably, try to sell them on the idea that staying in Calgary long term is a good idea. So obviously that's, part of the sales pitch, and good on him to do that. I wouldn't be shocked to find out he does a similar type of meeting with Weegar coming up as well. His Alan Walsh, the agent for Huberdeau, confirmed this meeting took place, and kind of this, what it was all about. So essentially, it makes a lot of sense, and is not shocked to see Treliving really pushing hard here to get these guys to remain in Calgary after pulling off a blockbuster deal. He can't have them leave as well, because that would really make the franchise look bad for players not wanting to stick around regardless of what he gets for a return. It's more of a reputational fact at that point. I know he seemed to be quite upset with seeming that people seem to think Calgary might have a reputation that they can't keep their star players. He seemed very irritated by that notion when he first talked about Matthew Tkachuk wanting to be moved and all that. And like I said, he's kind of out to prove that Calgary is a good place to play and that players want to stay, and that it's really not fair to give it that kind of a reputation. But time will tell. I will say this, from what I know from Calgary, listening to local fans, media, etc., that a new arena would be huge. That's a big part of the problem there. Some players can deal with the harsher winters, the climate and all that, but the arena and the facilities there do seem to be a big part of the issue, and it'd be nice to see them get back into talks with the city to get something figured out on a more long-term basis, but we'll have to wait and see on that. There hasn't really been any talk about that since they had a change in mayor and the old plans kind of got scrapped, so we'll see. Now on to the trade talk of the day. The Boston Bruins, of course, we know that there's rumored to be signing Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, and bringing them back to be the top two centers on the team. That's not yet confirmed. That's been rumored for some time. It's been a while now since the Bergeron rumor surfaced. The Krejci rumor surfaced not long after. We already knew that he was coming back and spending most of his summer in North America, and that there was a possibility it could happen. Even David Pastrnak teased the return, doing a video back in May when they were playing together, representing their country at the World Championships. And really, like, the rumors have been rampant ever since, but we still, at this point in the offseason, don't have confirmation, which is unusual. I mean, so we're talking about Cam Neely, Don Sweeney. This is secret of New York Islanders here, like in Lou Lamoriello, a different scenario, but it's the same sort of thing, and it makes me wonder how much work is actually done here and how much isn't. Now, I do know that a lot of the Bruins over the past week or so, current and former Bruins, have been celebrating Tuukka Rask, who I'm not sure if it was a wedding or like a renewal of vows or what have you, but they're all over in Italy. There's all kinds of social media posts from a variety of players and their spouses, showing a big group of them over there celebrating Rask in Italy. So I know that a lot of them are together, but of course they're not here. So I would imagine there's not a lot getting done on contracts per se. But regardless of what happens, if that's indeed going to happen, I do wonder if maybe they have handshake agreements in place with those top two centers, and they're trying to maybe move some money around and create some space before they can make them official. Kind of the same sort of deal as Lamoriello and the Islanders to an extent, but at the same time, what's going on with Boston? Well, rumor has it, according to sources here that are reporting on the Bruins, that Craig Smith is a player that they're actively trying to move. Now, they may not necessarily need cap space to start the year, because the problem here is that we don't know what kind of deals Bergeron and Krejci are willing to take, and that's a big problem, right? Because if you don't know, well, and obviously, how much space do you need to get that accomplished? I'm sure Don Sweeney has an idea, but we, the public, don't know, so it's hard to speculate. But Craig Smith was, even going back a few months ago, was in a rumor mill as being a player that we could possibly see get dealt. Of course, he had signed a 3-year free agent contract over 2 years ago, entering the final year of his deal. You could say he was inconsistent last year, and certainly a player that they very well could move on from to be able to make a little bit of extra cap space. So we'll have to see where that goes. Now, I know a team like Minnesota, for example, is actively looking for a forward who could play top 9, somebody who's not overly expensive, and he very well might fit the bill for what they're looking for too. I mean, because we just talked about Minnesota in the past couple of days and what they're looking for. Now, with these latest rumors on Boston, maybe they'll be a good fit together, but look for Craig Smith to possibly be a salary cap dump in Boston and create some space to bring back their veteran guys. Of course, they're going to have some LTIR likely in the beginning of the year with Marchand and McAvoy out to at least start the season for the first couple of months. So they may not need to rush into this, so it may not necessarily happen immediately, but it's going to have to happen sooner or later. So we'll see what the Bruins decide to do. Now, onto the Islanders, of course, like I said, dating back to these Kadri rumors that have been rampant and we've been discussing over the last couple of days, it does appear to be very likely that he's joining the Islanders. At least that's what many believe to be the case. And I know there's more information from Stefan Rosner, New York Islanders Hockey Now. He believes that Josh Bailey is indeed the player that they're shopping, that they've been shopping him for a while, and the fact that they haven't been able to get it done is kind of why we're at a bit of a holdup here. It's believed that teams like the Hawks and the Coyotes are the main teams that Lou is trying to get to take Bailey, of course, but like you said, where he's got 2 years left, it's a little bit more tricky, a little bit more expensive. It's believed that he's going to have to at least add multiple draft picks, which I know is something he probably doesn't want to do, and he's probably trying to drag this out, thinking, you know what, you guys could use some more players. I have what I want to give you. Maybe if we kind of, play this game a little longer, maybe I'll get a better price is what he's hoping for. I'm not really sure that's going to be the case, because the news is here is they can go get players from anybody. There's lots of teams in this boat, not just the Islanders, and depending on who's willing to give them the better package, it'd be determined by who they're going to take. It's just that simple, right? So obviously, with Bailey being the prime target, we'll have to see what the return would be. Obviously, I would suspect it's going to be, if it gets done, it's going to be Bailey and probably a multiple picks, maybe a prospect in there, going to Chicago, Arizona, whoever, and likely future considerations coming back. So then they would then announce the Kadri signing, the Dobson signing, and the Romanov signing, assuming everything is all done, signed, sealed, and delivered. But it might have to be more than just Bailey. It just really boils down to, what are all these contracts? We don't even know. What kind of deal is Kadri getting? That's another rumor and speculation on its own. I wouldn't think it would be more than a 5-year deal. Maybe in that $6 to $7 million range. That probably seems reasonable. I think if he was going to get more money than that, I think another team would be the one to do it. And I don't know that it was going to happen, as much as he had a career year last year. And he's a good player. He's turning 32 years old. I don't know he was getting a 7-year deal north of $7.5 to $8 million, like some speculated. It just seems a little bit rich for a player entering that stage of his career. 7 years takes him to 39. That's pretty risky, and I know that a lot of teams out there wouldn't necessarily want to do that. But we know Lamoriello has been high on Kadri dating back to their time both in the Maple Leafs organization, and we'll see. But the other thing, too, that Rosner mentions, which I've kind of said myself as well, so I'm kind of on the same page here in believing that he doesn't think Beauvillier or Varlamov are going anywhere. He believes they will definitely be in the roster next year, that they're not players that Lou wants to move. Like I said before, I personally, I'd be open to trading Beauvillier if I was getting like a 24, 25-year-old sniper or a big-time player that I can lock up long-term. Maybe I'll consider putting Beauvillier in there, but just as a cash dump to sign a UFA like Kadri, I know I wouldn't, but I wouldn't think Lou would either. And I really believe that he wants to stick with the tandem of Varley and Sorokin till that contract for Varlamov is done, and then probably go in a new direction at that point. But we'll see if Rosner's on the ball here with his reports. But certainly looks like Bailey's the guy. If he can't move Bailey for whatever reason, like I said, he might have to go to a different player here, and it might end up having to be somebody with a little bit more value. I don't think he would go down the road of like a Nelson or a Pajot, but it makes you wonder. And certainly players' trade protection in their contracts will play a role in what he can do here as well. And of course, they got to get all this figured out so they can hopefully turn attentions then to Matthew Barzal and getting him locked up long term. He's a pending RFA, and his qualifying offer for next year is $10 million. So he needs a mega deal. And I don't think he's willing to sign it until he sees some improvements and some better line mates. So we'll probably not going to see or hear anything of that, at least I wouldn't think, until next offseason. So let me know your thoughts on everything discussed here today down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.